Hello and welcome to Intrinsic Motivation and Seeing Yourself, featuring Birthday Planning Panic. I'm Sky Guan, and today we'll be taking a dive into Birthday Planning Panic, the game, its development, and what it means, and what I've learned about player motivations and insights that I've gathered from playtesting with regards to that. First of all, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, that being internal versus external sources of motivation. Intrinsic being emotions, values, creative expression, things like, in short, you're doing something because it makes you feel good. You are playing this game and you are trying to get better at it because you have the self-satisfaction of getting better at the game. And then extrinsic examples being number go up. You're playing games like RuneScape, you're grinding to see that number go up. High score and content unlock, where as you play the game and as you progress, you're motivated to do certain things, to play better or to play differently based on content that you unlock from doing so, be that upgrades or more dialogue. And so we go to seeing yourself. In short, relatability, representation, self-identification, and also just seeing yourself in games and in characters at its core has to do with similarity. Either similarities that you see within the characters that you have in common with them, or simply experiences, if not traits. And then a quick feature of player and player-character relationships. An ongoing study that I'm doing as part of master's thesis is on utilitarian versus self-representative two-type player-character relationships in MMOs, which I'll mention as it informs my creative intentions and dev expectations. So if you're here yesterday for my in-person talk about this specific topic, you have a little bit more insight on how all of this has been put together and how I've come across, or how I've come to draw my conclusions at the end part of this presentation. So first, this is Birthday Planning Panic. What is it? Well, it is a management sim and visual novel coded in RedPie. It is a fully solo developed, except for audio, game that I did in about 2 months development time, 1 month for the jam, and then 1 month to polish and publish. This was for the Game Jam over in January of 2024 with the theme Celebrate. More details on the screen. To start with, the game design philosophy I have in general, or rather my personal motivation in game design and development, is to bring joy, hope, or to incite feelings in at least one person. Now for the jam specifically, and then also just as I do with any project with a big deadline, is to simply complete a game within a deadline that expresses the theme thoroughly. In this case, it is simply theme plus scope plus preference, and then ease of access. So a big priority with my project management and planning is to minimize research required. I also want to make sure that choices matter in the game that I'm making, and to represent the unseen. A large part of my development and my design, as you see from here, the theme part of the theme scope preference, is to design thematically. Theme basically equaling story. Now, when I talk about story, I'm talking about storytelling in a great variety of ways. Not just the one-to-one telling a story through plot, through dialogue and writing and text, which would be thematic narratives, but also in experiential storytelling. I express the theme of celebration, and then also the further themes of love and life, and the other much smaller themes that come together into one coalesced and concrete theme a bit later in my section on creative direction. But in short, I am trying to make sure that as the player plays the game, they're experiencing, in essence, the moral of the story, or what I'm trying to express. In which case, in short, is the importance of taking a break, of resting, and taking time to care for yourself. That's one of the big things being love and self-love. And then the other thing, as part of my design philosophy and approach, is to draw upon personal experience and background knowledge, in part for ease of access and to minimize research required. 2 big things that I used for Birthday Planning Panic being my experience with event planning, both formal and informal, and just college life and college experience, both as a college student and as an educator, as a teacher that works with students. and also as a current master's student, living the life, so to speak. Now, the core game concept and design for both the Panic Planning is simply that it is a game about learning to love yourself while loving others, while surviving life as a struggling college student. In the game, you have to manage your key variables of stress, HP and MP, which represents your physical and mental health, event goals, which is planning progress, which happens weekly, time, which is the 28 days of playable days that spans this entire game, as a very short game, to reach the ending. Here's a core gameplay loop. It is very simple, as again, I only had 1 month to develop the core aspects of this game. Then 1 month to polish and polish and publish. It really starts with just a day starts. Every day you start with a quick progress report, which is just unique dialogue based on your HP and MP status and then your stress. It is a quick once over that the protagonist does of just your current state. Following that, it tells you if you have school that day or not, as school happens on mandatory days. Which means that you have to make sure you have your HP and MP at the right levels so that you don't fail the school check, essentially. Because school is not optional. And then following that, if it is not a school day, you have your action menu, which goes plan, work, break. And the gist of it simply being you make sure you balance all of your HP, MP, and stress, and then also your money, which only goes into party progress, which is planning. Here's the main action menu. Main 3 actions that you can choose to do are work, plan, and break. Break, which is just the main means of recovering HP, MP, and hopefully decreasing stress. Plan is your main way of your only way, rather, to progress your event planning. Then you'll notice on the right side, at the top right, it says venue. That is one of the names of one of the 4 weekly event goals. You have to make sure you clear your event goal by having sufficient planning progress for it every week. Behind the scenes, this is simply planning at least twice a week, such that you progress beyond the first stage of research and then second stage of actually ordering and buying and spending money on things. This gives the player 1 week, not 1 week, at least 1 day break of if you plan and you realize, oh shoot, actually I don't have the money for a certain thing, or I'm low on funds, then you can do the other actions. So there's a bit of strategy involved, but overall it's a very simple game. The game objective is the vague directive given to you from both the description of the game on itch.io and on Google Play is to essentially just plan the best party you can, given your limited resources. More explicitly, it tells you about today's I've just told you, the weekly event goals, to make sure you actually plan the party. Make sure your HP and MP don't get too low, and don't max out on stress, and then you manage your funds for the purpose of the event goal. Every single variable, every single stat here interacts with one another in some way, often very, very directly. If you don't have enough HP and MP when you go to school, you'll gain stress. If you fail certain event goals, or you end up not having enough money for certain event goals or options, the protagonist will feel really bad about not being able to do their best, not being able to do everything that her sister, who you're playing this party for in the story, deserves, which is the best. And thus you'll gain stress, so on and so forth. Now, there is technically not a win condition, there's only a loss condition. That being, don't max out your stress. If you do, it is in fact a game over. Now, the intended motivation, from my perspective, for the player is first challenge. If you perform within the limits, then you can show your skill. You can have the satisfaction of mastery. That being, if you learn the system, if you figured out, oh, actually, I only need to do a break like once every week or twice, or how far can you go without having to take a break? How far can you go without XYZ? How much money to actually allocate during which stages and which phases and which weeks, i.e. which event goals, if you so choose to replay the game. You just get better and better at it. And simply this relies upon player inclination towards optimization. And then also just unlock more content. Every single planning option has unique dialogue and art at the end. There is also unique dialogue for low, high HP, MP, and stress, as I said, at the start of the day, as well as just across the game, at different stages and different events and so on. And then on to creative direction. Overall, this is just a slide about me, a bit more about my philosophy, and then also general creative direction, general inclinations. Overall, I'm incredibly detail oriented, analytical, and I love various forms of storytelling, as I said before. And as a designer, as you probably can already tell, I'm very into making sure that player action, existence, and control is expressed and reflected to the player. This is in the form of feedback and also in form of, for example, how every single variable, every single stat and resource in a game, in essence, has an effect on one another. Every action you take will have at least one instance in which it is reflected, and the majority of this being at the end of the game, at the ending, at the birthday party itself, all of your different extra options, any extra goodies you've gathered from planning, as well as simple things like basic venue, which kind of cake you've gotten, how large the cake is, how many guests you've got. All of those interact with one another. Um, and also, as a writer, I am very into grounding my characters in realism. I'm just huge on realism in general, and then also depth through purpose. Thus, character role, disposition, past, and goal. And more specifically about Birthday Planning Panic's creative direction. The theme Celebrate is what I've deconstructed into life and love. As I said before, Birth of Plan and Panic is a game about, in essence, a college student that's struggling with mental health and then also just the typical struggles of being a college student, which varies, but a very common part of the college student struggle, college student life struggle, is oftentimes or unfortunately mental illness, difficulty self-regulating, especially exiting their life from K to 12 high school, and then plenty of students are also going into living on their own for the first time. And even if not, it is a stage of life that is still very difficult. As such, I've deconstructed Celebrate into life and love. These two things, life and love, both come from these three big things. The first thing I think of with Celebrate is parties and birthdays and holidays. Birthdays being celebration of birth and thus life. Celebrations themselves being expression of love and appreciation, and expression itself just being communication, period. And thus, drawn from all of these, love being love for the self and others, giving, receiving, acceptance and rejection, life being self-regulation and management, school, work, and health, both physical and mental. Um, all of these, you'll notice, are in themselves very specific, but also come together to come together as the one big theme of the game overall, seeping into sort of every nook and cranny of Birthday Planning Panic. Um, the theme of celebration and topics I'm interested in and knowledge about is the combination of these these three things rather, is how I came upon, or I came to my core game concept. As I already mentioned, experience with college student life and struggles, mental health disorders, and just mental health in general. Neurodivergence, I myself do have ADHD, and I struggle greatly with self-regulation. And just everything listed here, I have personal experience with. And I felt that it would make sense for me to express all of that and put that into writing as realistic and relatable a story as possible that can hopefully help people feel seen and people relate to a character. And so all of this creative direction and themes and philosophy all becomes manifested in both the story, but mostly in the protagonist. You can customize the name of the protagonist, but her default name is Alex. Despite being able to make her name whatever you want, however, she and the game itself has very minimal customizability of Alex, of the character. You very quickly realize that she is her own character through the opening scene. This is a show of personalities. This is where you first realize if you have had experienced social anxiety or anxiety in general, or you know about it at least a little bit, the very first few lines will tip you off immediately to, oh, she's got problems. And, oh, what does it mean that I see myself in this? At least that's what I hope you will feel. And In short, though you are the player, she is protagonist. Though she's designed to be relatable, she's not designed to be self-insert. Not only due to scope, but also intentionally. She is her own character. And I wanted to, in part, see what would happen with my players and my playtesters if I were to give you, off the bat, a customizable name, but then very quickly, hopefully, have you realize that you can't actually customize that much about her. You can help her make decisions. Your actions are Alex's actions. You direct her, but you are not Alex, or at least I hope you would see. Now, a little bit more about Alex. How it's actually manifested is in her personality. She is insecure. She has low self-esteem. She prioritizes others over self, a major part of this game, a major theme. And she expresses love and identity by means of performance, as in performing for others. She bases her self-worth on what she can do for others, which is why a huge core theme of Perfect Planning Panic is, though your whole goal from the start is to celebrate someone else, your sister Jess, you are also, hopefully, moral of the story being, should be practicing celebrating yourself as well. Don't forget to practice self-love, and then very importantly, take breaks. It is, in fact, a very intentional thing for it to be a core part of the very few actions you can take in the core gameplay loop. And also just a one-to-one core part of what it is to be managing your work-life balance, to be self-regulating. Then a few other core traits that are not as prominent through the dialogue, through gameplay experience, is that she has ADHD. This explains her one task per day, one action per day work strategy, and then also how the game functions. This is a slight exaggeration of how I personally do things, and from methods that have worked for me before, which is just dedicating one day to one thing. And I reckon anyone that's had ADHD or had to try and deal with their neurodivergence or someone else's might be familiar with these sorts of unconventional methods to try and self-regulate and make a work environment that works for you. Just generally doing your best with what you've got is also a core part of the theme of Perfect Planning Panic. She's also trans feminine, and her family is only her sister and her mom, no extended relatives. All three of these being expressed in the game in a way that I would hope is not subtle. In fact, a few of these are very explicit, but aren't as major in terms of player experience as personality. Overall, the focus during development is mostly on game design and balance, despite all that I've talked about regarding the thought I've put into the theme and then expressing it through the main character. After all, my goal going into this with this core game concept is to make a management sim first and a visual novel second. This is largely, in part, due to making this game in Ren'Py, because that's the engine and the language that I have had the most recent experience with, coming out of also doing multiple trainings and workshops on Ren'Py and have taught it. It just felt like the simplest, easiest way for me to make and learn new things and do new things, like very specific UI, although not complex, can be annoying to work with and debug, and I don't want to spend all the time troubleshooting that sort of thing when I already have the base knowledge for things such as screen language in Ren'Py. Despite that, though, I didn't want to make a typical visual novel that was mostly gameplay through solely story. As such, I put a lot of time into the gameplay, into trying to express experiential storytelling as much as possible, to have the player really feel, as they're playing, very on the nose, I guess I should be taking breaks, because if I don't, I can literally see my stats go down and my stress levels go up, and my hope is that the direct effect of stress levels going up is, aside from if you hit 100 you lose, is you get unique dialogue that gets more and more sad and depressing, and is the largest reason why there is a content warning on this game, for depictions of self-deprecation, anxiety, and depression, to hopefully guilt the player into recognizing the value of taking a break, because that is the main way you can get rid of stress, and that's only at increments. another large part of the game design being it is actually pretty hard to accrue stress from the start. But if you slack off and you push the limits even once, one too many times, you start accruing stress, and then it becomes harder and harder to manage it. Although currently it is still tuned to be very easy. As long as you take a break regularly, you will not have any issues. And in fact, that has caused not all of my players, a not insignificant amount of my players and playtesters, to not have seen all or even a little bit of the stress dialogue. In spite of that, though, I'll discuss this a little bit more in a later slide. But yeah, in short, gameplay and my focus on experiential storytelling, telling the themes of take care of yourself, mental health affects you everywhere, life is tough, but what's it? Yeah, take care of yourself. Very direct message. As such, the gameplay is very much more of my focus than the story. And also, just the fact that I just spent less time on the story, period. The overall story was fully completed during the concept stage. When I was thinking about making it, okay, birthday, celebrate, throw it in college student life, and in mental health, because I love talking about that, and it's a large part of my life. Alright, set that all together. This is going to be a protagonist that is insecure, has social anxiety, depression, struggles with all of that, struggles with feeling like she's got self-worth, and then most of all, struggling to remember to love herself, to remember to take care of herself, such that the entire game you're spending all your time working to celebrate your sister, celebrate someone you love, without really caring for yourself. Ideally, you do care for yourself and you take breaks the whole time so you don't lose the game by maxing out your stress and just neglecting your health, mental and physical overall. But yeah, beginning, middle to end, even a plot twist I had planned, and also all the characters involved in the game, even if some of them didn't have as much screen time as I wanted to, were made and planned from the very start. I just didn't really spend that much time on it. I already knew what was going to happen, knew exactly where what style was going to go, how much dialogue I had. So, imagine my surprise when I got the player feedback, and very few people mentioned the gameplay as super stand out. The most I got from my players and from player feedback is the game was cute, the game was good. It didn't feel too hard, too easy. In fact, most of them didn't even mention difficulty at all. Almost all of the feedback I got was about the story, was about how they felt when they played the game, which to me was deeply surprising, but also I felt quite happy because, as I said at the very start, my goal is to make at least one person feel something and hopefully feel happy as they play. I recognize that the story and the themes and then the dialogue directly made people feel all of sad feelings as well, as it deals with mental health and depression, and you get to see Alex at her lowest lows, essentially, if you max out your stress and get a game over, or just get close to it. But I was just, yeah, I was shocked. A few quotes or paraphrases from students and players that have played the game, being, I knew she had anxiety from the opening scene, I do the exact thing too, which is great because I was sort of worried a little bit that I was being a bit too subtle with all of the complex themes and all of the very specific things, all of the many things I put into the story that weren't a huge focus on the gameplay experience itself, on the experiential storytelling. Anxiety is not a huge core component of the game design, but it is in the story, simply through the fact that Alex has it and expresses it through so. Other things being, the story really hit me, just simply people caring so much of the story really surprised me. And then also, one line that made me laugh a bit is, I could tell that you really thought a lot about being a college student, which is true, and I am opting to take it as a compliment, because it means that these people playing it realize, like, hey, and this is something that someone told me, I didn't realize how many small things were, in fact, a part of my daily life and my daily college student life struggle. once I saw them in the game, once I saw Alex remove them, I realized, hey, I do that too. That's me. I do that too. That you just hadn't really thought about before, which was really lovely. Um, but one line that stuck with me the most, aside from just general talk about the story and people talking way more about the story and liking the art than I thought they would. Perhaps this is just my own bias, bracing myself for complaints about balance, about it being too easy or too short or whatever. But instead, one line that stuck with me the most, especially since this was during an in-person playtesting session, was I just didn't want to see her sad. Um, I was really perhaps shocked, I suppose. I was taken aback when I heard them say this. Notably, I'm keeping all of these anonymous because they did not. I don't want to out anyone for relating to the mental health struggles of Alex in my game. But yeah, I this one line told me a lot. Not just that I'm very happy that it made this person actually feel something, but also that the intrinsic motivation that I thought that I was intending on, that I thought players would feel the most, that being optimization and feeling like they're really mastering the simple but you can still strategize around it system. Trying to, because it's such an easy game, optimize as much as you could, get the best results possible in all of the options as you are doing, you're planning the event and all that. I didn't realize that people would see Alex, would see the protagonist, and would see themselves in her. And even if they did not, just didn't want to see her sad. They had the intrinsic emotional motivation to not want to fail, to want to do good because they don't want to see the sad text. Although I already sensed that a intentional thing that I did is to try and guilt trip the player into doing better, into learning the lesson of please take breaks and rest. I didn't realize it would have such a personal, I will say, sort of effect and sort of motivation. I was coming at it from a perspective of oh, this makes me feel bad. I don't want to get guilt tripped for this, so I'm going to do better. Instead of, I just don't want to see the character sad. Um, which is an interesting angle that I had not particularly focused on in my research in player-to-player character relationships. But I just want to say thank you. She wants to see you happy too. And now on to more specific or more general insights from playtesting rather. Important thing to note, most playtesters were in my target audience. My target audience writing, I wrote it down as for 14 to 25 or your late 20s. My goal is for college students or anyone that are recent grads, or people that are enthusiastic about the college student life, or simply even that relate to the struggle of work-life balance of school, or have experience with or struggle with mental health and then self-regulation and all of that. So although my actual playtesters tended towards, none of them were under 18, I'm pretty sure. They were closer to, well, I'll say 17 to early 20s. I don't think there's really, most of them were not over 25, I'll say. And the other part of my target audience I was intending on was being if you liked management sims. And quite a few of my actual playtesters, actual players and player base did like management sims. They came into the game expecting management sim, and then also, yeah, I will presume what they expected, but they liked management sims. So the gameplay was smooth for them. But as I said before, unexpectedly, players resonated with the story and Alex's struggles a lot more than I thought they would, especially with the dialogue containing depictions of anxiety, depression, and self-sacrifice, which objectively I thought was just a fun little flavor. And for any players I know, story is sort of optional. But again, I came to this with the management sim first, visual novel second perspective, though I did put a bunch of work into both. Contrary to my expectations, the intrinsic motivation, as I said, was single-handedly, basically, driven by the game's narrative. I did not expect there to be yeah, I expected it to be so high. I expected there to be more people trying to optimize the game or trying to get the best thing because they want to see number go up and just to know that they did the best they could. They got the best upgrade of everything, and that was still a present element in players' experiences. I did see them try to do their best, with or without visible indication of being emotionally drawn or motivated in certain ways. But just intrinsic motivation was most affected by more, yeah, most spurred on by the narrative. Um, the extrinsic motivation, as I said, seemed to be far less significant to players, likely partially due to simplicity of design. I think it's very easy for players to overlook um, small changes in dialogue, which was to be expected, but there were quite a few players that did notice the very small changes. The fact that there are quite a few thresholds for HP individually, MP individually, stress individually, combination of HP and MP, the fact that there's a little bit of RNG to each of the actions, and the fact that the dialogue also changes for each of those variations, not just the numbers themselves. But quite a few players have noticed those things. But what's it? Yeah. Um, as I said before, not all players saw the stress and exclusive dialogue, but for those that did, they felt a strong need to recover immediately. At least of the ones I've seen in my in-person sessions, they felt like they had failed. More so, with more of an emotional reaction than expected, of simply, "Oh no, I gained stress. How did that happen?" And what's it? Yeah, the experiential narrative overall ended up being more impactful than gameplay mechanics. The experiential narrative being as you play through it and as you interact with the game, the direct dialogue and plot related narrative that appears and the dialogue you get from Alex ended up being more impactful onto the players than the game mechanics themselves. Limitations ended up tended to seem more like they were obstacles to happiness rather than tools to be conquered. Again, the perspective of my expectation of more players opting to challenge the game and to tackle mastery of the systems and mechanics. No matter how easy they are, you can still optimize them and try your best to get the best option for every single one, which I had hoped more players would do, because then more would have realized that it is literally impossible to get the best option of every event planning option. It's impossible to get absolutely everything in one playthrough. Because the point of the game is not to make you sacrifice everything, make you intentionally optimize such that you are just barely above the threshold for not gaining stress and not taking a hit emotionally and then also stat wise from failing the school stat requirement whenever that comes around, for failing different parts of the game. You're not supposed to sacrifice yourself thoroughly. To be able to succeed. Because, as I said before, there is a loss condition. But the win condition is much less, do the best that you can. And much more, please reach the ending. There won't be any mechanical or gameplay detriment directly, aside from it being more difficult to aside from it being more difficult to avoid the loss condition if you push yourself and if you push Alex, the player character, to her limits. What's it? But yeah, a very interesting observation. But also, it is important to note that mileage varies by player. From things as simple as playtime, which varied from 10 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes, I think was the longest that someone took for the first playthrough of the game, to the average of closer to 20 to 30 minutes. Some people took, one player, I think, took like under 10 minutes to finish the first run of the game. And that's because he skipped everything, all of the dialogue and everything. And then one player in particular took an hour and 30 minutes, which I was very happy about because they took their time to enjoy the game. But very notably, those outside of the target audience felt little to no connection with the theme of celebration. Two players stick out in mind that are examples of these two main reasons that I would say, or main things that I saw happen about this. One being doesn't read these players skip story for gameplay, and that's perfectly fine. Not a fan of story nor management sim is one um, possible trait that is just outside of the target audience. This, if you skip story for gameplay, that's perfectly fine in terms of as a management sim. But I did get one player that was a gotcha game player that is a recent grad, so they were college age, but they just didn't really engage with the story, and thus they didn't really engage with the themes at all. Instead, they played the game as I thought more players would, to be honest, which is engaging with strictly the mechanics. But it did catch me by surprise that he completely skipped everything. Because there was a story, but that's how it be. And then also not being able to relate to Alex's personal issues is another big thing that happens with people outside of the target audience. This is largely in part either because you are outside of the age range, are not a college student, or more significantly, you don't struggle with, or you don't have that much knowledge about mental health issues, or more specifically, rather, mental illnesses and disorders. You either don't have the experience yourself, or it is not at the top of your brain to think about those. And I did have one playtester that was presumably neurotypical, or at least did not recognize anything from the opening scene, and older than, I would say, 30. I did not ask their age. And it was very interesting to see because he questioned multiple things in the opening scene that I did not realize, or I anticipated people would question if they didn't get it, but I had forgotten was something that I had noted down already as anticipatory, because almost everyone else had either skipped the story and didn't see it, or related to it and didn't really bring it up as a big thing. They recognize it as a normal part of the experience of just being a college student, or they did in fact bring it up from, as I said, the opening scene, because it's something that stuck out to them in particular. But yeah, in short, thank you very much for listening to me talk about Perfect Planet Panic. Alex, all the things that went into celebration, the themes of love and life, and the design philosophy and my creative direction behind it, as well as hopefully, I hope that this might have been a bit helpful with you as either just a gamer, a player, or a game dev, thinking about how your development intentions and how much focus you put on certain things. And perhaps if you were underestimating your own skill at telling stories, I would say, or writing, which I certainly did. Hopefully that's been helpful to you with analyses of your playtesting, analyses of player feedback, and overall game design, and so on. Game is on itch.io right now for free, and is also on Google Play if you have an Android. It is not on iOS or the Apple Store, unfortunately, and I don't think it will be because it is a whole process. But free to play it if you would. Thank you very much. Patch 1.3 coming sometime in July or after that. Have a great day. If you have any questions, I will be in Discord for my Q&A, and also just in general. Have a great one.